Hello and welcome to CashPeek. So today we're going to continue the livestock schedules feature. So now that we've created an enterprise and the associated classes and outcomes for our business, we can then come to any of our budgets. So today I'm going to go to Schedule Demo. And then above the budget, we can now see the option to view schedules. So if we click on View Schedules, we can then see the enterprise that we created earlier being pulled in, so Sheep Demo. So I can now create a schedule for this enterprise. And when I create that schedule, you can see that this table pops up here. This has all the classes that were created as defaults, and it also has the class that I created as a demo. So this demo U here. So if I now put in some initial values, so 100 into here, 100 into here, and let's put maybe 200 in there, 100 in there. Have some sales values in here of 50 and then put that into there, and then let's also showcase the transfers out. So we put 50 out of the lambs, this then doesn't balance, but then if we put in 50 transferred into here, then that then balances up. So we have the initial values in our schedule table. We can then also go into setup schedule. So when you go into setup schedule, you see all of the configuration for the classes that we set up at the business level. However, this is now for the schedule. So this has all the values that you configured, but any changes in here will just be for the schedule and the budget. So these won't be reflected at the business level and will just apply here. So let's say for demo U, I came in and for wool sales, I was like, great. 80% of stock count is what I have for the majority. That's what I set up at the business. However, for this schedule and for this budget, I would like to also add in 50% of, say, sales, submit that, go back to here. That's now been set up. I could also say maybe change the birth rate to be, say, 170, save that change, and then come back through to here. And we can see that the birth rate of 170 is reflected there. Cool. So this is the table as it was before with this new value coming in here. If I now come out of my schedule and go into the budget and look at one of the rows that I have created an outcome for, so let's say wool sales, come into wool sales, right click here, I can now see that I have this option to allocate. So we have this allocation button here. So if I click this, I can see the classes that I created for this enterprise and the outcome of wool that is associated with this wool sales code, with this wool sales row. And we can also see that 20% for March and June has come through here. So if you go back to the previous video, you'll be able to see for the demo U for wool, I created a month allocation of 20% in March and a month allocation of 20% in June. And this value here of 105 is 80% of the start count and 50% of the sales. So that is 80 plus 25, which makes 105. And we can see that we have allocated only 42 there. But if we put in another value of, say, 20 here, that then calculates what has been allocated across the months and puts in 40% into December. But say we wanted it to just be allocated across these 3 months, if we put in, say, 60% into here, that's then 0, and this has been allocated across these 3 months or so. If I now go up to here and then start allocating for these other classes and outcomes, and put in, say, like 2020, and then put in whatever, 40% there, put 30% down here, or just leave that as blank because there's nothing in there, 100% of 0, and then if we put in, say, 40% into there, and then that creates a row in there. And we can actually see that this is still orange, so there's a mismatch between these two values, and that's because I haven't put anything in for this row here. So let's put in, say, 50% into there. Cool, so that has automatically created all of these rows for you. If I then just put in some values into here, say like 2 and 4, and then also put in, say, 3 and 5 into there. So you can see in March, or they're both for March, let's maybe put in one for, let's change that back to 0. and let's put in, say, 5 and 4 into here. So we have 168 for March and 420 for June. So if we now come out of here, we can see that we have the 168 in there and the 420 in there for June.